I have a crazy function to tell you about. This is a line. Don't worry, that's not the crazy one. It's just a line. But a line is really nice because it's continuous everywhere. There's no vertical asymptotes. There's no weird infinite squiggly pieces. There's no holes that are missing. A line is continuous everywhere. But in this video, I want to tell you about this crazy function that is both not continuous. In fact, it's going to be very far from continuous. It's not going to be continuous on any interval at all, and yet is actually linear. These two conditions that I've put up here are collectively referred to as a function being linear, and this might not look exactly like the equation of a line that you were expecting, but this is our general notion of linearity in mathematics. And it basically says is that a linear function is one that plays nicely with the two major types of operations you can do, which is either addition or multiplication. Either way, the function respects those operations. So for example, if I go to my equation of a line and I start at some point x, which is going to have a height f of x, if I take the x and multiply it out by some value of c, then f of c of x, visually at least it looks like it's just basically that value of c times f of x. And similarly, if I have the x, which has a height of f of x, and a y, which is going to have a height of f of y, then if I consider where x plus y is going to be, well, its height, f of x plus y, visually again looks like just, well, the sum of f of y and f of x. You can verify this algebraically if you wish, but the point is that a line through the origin obeys these two particular properties. This, by the way, is only meant to describe lines that go through the origin. We're allowing c to be equal to 0 here. The reason I like this definition of linearity is that it extends quite a bit beyond just functions from R to R. So for example, if you're a follower of my linear algebra playlist, you might consider transformations of the plane like this that take R2 and transform them to 2 dimensions again. And in linear algebra, we define linear transformations to be ones that obey these two basic properties as well. And so in mathematics, this is the general notion of linearity that we use. So what is this crazy function I'm alluding to that is linear but not continuous? Well, the real numbers are kind of a funky place. And I'm going to tell you a very interesting property about the real numbers. So if you take the number line, there is some subset that I'm going to call S. A generic element in that subset I'll call S sub alpha, but there's some set of the real numbers that has the following property. It says, if you take any real number x that you choose, then I can find a unique set of rational numbers. The Q stands for rational numbers, a unique set of rational numbers Qi such that your x can be written as a linear combination of the things in that set S. That is, like a rational number times one of the things in the set plus another rational number times another thing in the set for some finite number of elements in the set. So for example, if you take like pi, maybe this is written as like 7 times one of the things in the set and 3/4 times something else in the set. Who knows what it's going to be because I don't know what the set is. Maybe even pi is in the set, in which case pi would be written as 1 times pi, 1 being a rational number. But generically, the point is I can take any value of x and write it as a linear combination in this way. That there is such a crazy set might seem a bit surprising, and actually the meat of this video is going to be justifying this statement later on. But let me use this property for now. What I'm going to do is define a function f of x in the following way. If you start with an x, and you write it this way as this linear combination, then the function of x, what it does is just add up all those rational coefficients, the q1 plus the q2 down to the qk. Because I'm assuming that it can always be done in a finite way, the result here is just some rational number. So if you believe my weird statement about s, then the f of x is certainly well defined. I have these two different things to show. I want to first show that the function is not continuous, and then secondly, I need to show that it's linear. Let's do the claim about not being continuous first. If I look at the way this f of x is defined, it's just a sum of rational numbers. And a sum of rational numbers surely is rational. And so the output of f is definitely going to be a rational number. But if I consider the real line, which I told you was a weird place, between any two rational numbers, it's a theorem that there always is an irrational number in between it. No matter how close those rational numbers might be, there will always be that intermediate irrational number. And this implies the function cannot be continuous. It fails that intermediate value property of continuous functions. That if I have these two different outputs, it will never be able to attain all of the various outputs in between because it can never hit an irrational number. The output of the function is always rational. So this is not a continuous function. It's going to have tons and tons of holes in it. But it is linear. Let me show you why. Let me take a generic x, and it's decomposed in this way. q1 times one of the elements from S all the way down to qk times another element from S. Then I could multiply both sides of that by c. If c is a rational number, then the coefficients out the front are also rational numbers. This is to say, the unique way that I can write any number in terms of S as linear combinations of things from S with coefficients that are rational is this one. That's what it means to say there's a unique decomposition. So then if I try to figure out what f of cx is going to be, well, it's just the sum of all of those coefficients. So cq1 all the way down to cqk. And I can factor a c out of that, and this is just the same thing as c times f of x. So indeed, f of c of x is just the constant c pulled out the front times f of x. Note carefully that this is highly dependent on the fact that the c was a rational number that I'm multiplying by. If I multiply by a real scalar, in particular an irrational, then this property doesn't work because the things stuck out the front are no longer rational numbers. So really what I'm going to be proving is something that's called Q-linearity, or linearity with scalars that are rational numbers. Let's come back to that point in a moment. But regardless, I've shown the first of these properties here, and now there's the second property that f of x plus y is f of x plus f of y. I'm going to annoyingly leave that to all of you to figure out in the comments. It works basically the same way as the previous property. And so there I have it, a crazy function that is not continuous, but is linear, at least as long as I'm using rational scalar values for c. So this whole thing hinged on this statement, the existence of this set S that we talked about, and the unique way that you can take x and decompose it in terms of that set. But why? Why is that crazy property true? Well, to answer this, we need to return to the axiom of choice. And just as a quick refresher, the axiom of choice says that if I have a set like this one, I could just come in and choose one element from the set. Seems straightforward. If I had a second set, I could choose an element from the second set as well. And then I can keep going. As I have more and more sets, and I could have a lot more sets, I should always be able to choose one element from every single set. This maybe seems obvious when I write it in a finite way, but you have to imagine I could have an infinite number of sets. It doesn't even have to be countable. It could be an uncountable number of sets. And then the sets themselves could be uncountably infinite. Is it completely obvious that I can choose from every one of those sets? Well, that's what the axiom of choice is asserting. And in mathematics, the axiom of choice is the grounding axiom for actually quite a large portion of mathematics, and many practicing mathematicians just going to default to accepting this as part of their mathematical worldview. Not everyone does. There's constructionists who like to try to prove everything without needing the axiom of choice. But nevertheless, we're going to use this in this video. Because one of the consequences of the axiom of choice is the following statement that sounds like a linear algebra statement. Every vector space has a basis. And again, I'm going to reference my linear algebra course if you want to know a little bit more about these words, but the basic idea, if you consider two-dimensional space, is that there's two basis vectors in two-dimensional space, 1, 0, and 0, 1, such that if you take any other vector like this green one, I can write it as a linear combination of the basis vectors, some stretching factor of the red one and some stretching factor of the yellow one. And it is a theorem that the axiom of choice implies that every vector space, no matter what, has a basis. Okay, so where's the vector space I want to talk about in this video? Well, it is just the real numbers by itself. This is a very weird vector space, but you can think of the real numbers as a vector space over the rational numbers. What do I mean by that? Well, I certainly have a notion of vector addition. If you take two real numbers like pi and e, you can add them together, and pi plus e is another real number. So I can add vectors nicely, the first condition of a vector space. And then the other thing that I need for a vector space is a notion of scalar multiplication. So if you take pi and then multiply it by a half, like a half pi, that is also a real number. And then from those two different operations, to be a vector space, there's a relatively long list of properties that you just sort of have to verify that are all true. Like, for example, that you can distribute that multiplication over the addition of two different things. But all of these can be quickly shown to be true. So R is indeed a vector space over the rational numbers. And specifically, this is true for all values of C where the C's are rational. That's what I mean by a vector space over the rational numbers. So let's go back to that weird statement we were saying before, where I said there is a set such that any x can be written down in this particular way with these rational numbers qi. What I'm really saying here is that there is a basis. I'm saying that there is some basis to the real numbers, thought of as a vector space over the rational numbers, which means that you can take for any x and in a unique way write x as a linear combination of those basis vectors, the S alpha. So what's really happening is that the axiom of choice implies that this specific vector space of the real numbers over the rationals has a basis, and then we're going to use that basis to get us the function we defined before that has the properties that we talked about, namely it's not continuous, but it is linear. Now you might have a couple thoughts come to mind. For example, you might think that I'm cheating a little bit by insisting linearity but only with rational coefficients. It sort of sets me up for some weird counterexample like this that misses the irrational numbers as this function does. However, because the rational numbers are dense in the real numbers, you might have really thought that a function that was linear with respect to scalars in the rational was totally sufficient to be able to get a continuous function. But no, it turns out it is not. And then you also might be a little frustrated that I haven't actually shown you how to get this. I haven't shown you what the set S is. I haven't shown you how to take a number x like pi and decompose it in terms of this basis. All I'm really saying is that from the axiom of choice, there must be such a crazy set, and from that set you could get this function. And this is just how proofs involving the axiom of choice typically work. It is non-constructive. It doesn't tell you what that set is, it only tells you that set must exist. As a math YouTuber, I love making interesting math videos like this one. But as a math professor, I know that to truly master mathematics, you have to be actively involved in your own mathematical journey. And that's why I am so proud that this video is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant is an online learning platform with thousands of lessons across mathematics, science, and computer science from basic to advanced levels. All of their lessons are delightfully interactive, where you're engaging in hands-on learning, whether that's visualizing core calculus concepts, building a new algorithm, or even assessing a neural network. Brilliant puts that hands-on learning first. I'm a huge believer that if you're learning a little bit every day, that this can lead to really large impacts over time, particularly if your learning is well supported and well structured. And this is why I'm such a big fan of Brilliant. So to get started for free, visit brilliant.org/TrevorBassett or click the link down in the description, and the first 200 people to sign up are going to get 20% off an annual premium subscription. And with that said, if you have any thoughts or questions, do leave them down in the comments below, and we'll do some more math in the next video.